Hi, my name is Maya. I am a college counselor and a former UC admissions reader, and welcome to my second video in a series on how to write the UC Personal Insight questions. In this video, I will be discussing how to outline and draft your personal insight questions. In my previous video, I discussed how to brainstorm and select topics for your essays. So if you have not watched that video, that one might be great to watch first. But if you already know what you want to write about and you just want help with drafting, then you can go ahead and start here. In future videos, I will be discussing how to revise and edit your essays, as well as giving additional essay tips. So make sure to subscribe to get yourself through the whole writing process. Okay, so you've watched my first video and you have settled on your topics for the UC Personal Insight questions, and now you are sitting down to write. Here's my advice. Answer the question. What? I mean, it's true. Okay, so it's not that simple, but this is a point I'm going to keep coming back to. The most important thing when writing the UC essays is making sure that you are clearly and directly answering the question. The UC admissions readers are not looking for a creative personal narrative. So if you've read, say, personal statements of, how people got into Harvard, and they are all experimental and innovative and jump around to different parts of the student's life and are full of dialogue, they'd have this really cool hook and have a detailed flavor palette about the student's favorite homemade dish. Yeah, don't do that. This is actually a really nice thing about the UC essays. They don't expect you to be a professional creative writer, which most people aren't. You just need to be able to talk about your life and the things that you did in high school clearly and directly, which means that even if you don't consider writing one of your strengths, you can still write really good UC personal insight questions. So you've got your 4 topics, the 4 most important things that you want the UCs to know about you, and you're pretty sure which questions you want to put them under. What next? The first step is going to be to create an outline for your essay. Just to keep in mind as you're getting started, you don't want to do any of this in the UC application itself. You want to outline and draft and revise all in a separate document. I really recommend using Google Docs because it saves different versions of what you're writing, so you can always go back and see something that you've written earlier. But any kind of Word or whatever you prefer to write in is fine. Okay, step 1, creating an outline. I recommend the following structure for a basic UC essay outline. Paragraph 1, respond directly to the question. In paragraph 2, you want supporting evidence that illustrates what you did. Finally, paragraph 3 should be a reflection on what you learned, what you've taken away from that experience. To be clear, your UC essay absolutely does not have to be 3 paragraphs. It could be 3 paragraphs, but it could be 5 paragraphs. You just have to see what you end up writing and how it makes sense to divide it up. However, I do find that thinking of it in 3 chunks is really helpful for drafting because you have the first chunk that's the intro, the second chunk that's the body and evidence, and then the third chunk that's the conclusion. So how do you start this outline? I find it really helpful to write 3 sentences, 1 for each section of the outline. So let's say you're responding to UC number 1 about leadership. Just as a refresher, UC question number 1 is describe an example of your leadership experience in which you have positively influenced others, helped resolve disputes, or contributed to group efforts over time. For the first sentence of this outline, you either want to answer the question if it's phrased as a question, or respond directly to the prompt. Just write a simple, clear sentence that connects your topic with the idea or theme behind the question. So whatever you did that demonstrates leadership with the idea of leadership. So again, this can be really straightforward. For example, you could write, I have been a leader who positively influenced others and helped solve group problems through my time at Jedi training camp. Don't worry, you can always revise this later. For sentence number 2, you want to take a minute to brainstorm some specific examples of how you demonstrated leadership through the activity that you're writing about. Definitely write these down. So our Jedi apprentice might be brainstorming and thinking, okay, so I guided young Padawans in basic training, and then, oh yeah, I supported my peers when I was a junior lightsaber coach. Oh yeah, and then there was that time junior year when we were attacked by the Sith and I led a team of apprentices to victory and saved everyone. So yeah, I definitely want to include that. Once you have these examples, you want to summarize them in a sentence that links back to that overall topic. and shows that what you're saying in the first sentence is true. So in this case, you want to show that these specific examples you're talking about demonstrate leadership. So for the second sentence, our apprentice Jedi might write, "As an apprentice Jedi, I was able to help young Jedi develop their skills as well as lead others in defending the Jedi training camp against the Sith." Now you want to write a final third sentence that focuses on what you have learned or how you have grown from that experience. "Through Jedi training, I learned that by overcoming my own fear, I could set the best example for others." And then just put these three sentences together. "I have been a leader who positively influenced others and helped solve group problems through my time at Jedi training camp. As an apprentice Jedi, I was able to help new Jedi develop their skills as well as lead others in defending the Jedi training camp from the Sith. Through Jedi training, I learned that by overcoming my own fear, I could set the best example for others." Sounds like they almost have an essay, right? You can use these three sentences to set up a formal outline, which I do recommend that you do. So the first sentence becomes the topic for paragraph 1. The second sentence becomes the topic for paragraph 2, with the three examples you came up with underneath. And then the third sentence becomes the conclusion, the topic for paragraph 3. And just with that, you've already accomplished two huge things. You've started the intro paragraph to your essay, and you have a structured format for the entire essay. You might find that ultimately you don't have space to talk about all three examples that you came up with during brainstorming, but that's fine. I recommend going ahead and drafting all of them. I mean, maybe you even have more. Maybe you have 4 or 5 different things that you're thinking of. I would say go ahead and write them out, and then you'll be able to figure out which ones are the stronger ones or how you want to link them, and then you can always trim it down as you revise. As you draft, you're going to expand on the ideas in your outline using a clear and direct style. Before you get started, here are some pointers. My first recommendation is to not use a hook. And I know this might seem kind of unexpected and maybe even be a little bit controversial because I have definitely seen other counselors recommend using a hook for the UC essays. The UC say they are not looking for a hook. I have read UC essays. I've been a UC admissions reader. And I know from experience that when you're reading carefully, but you're reading quickly, and you're wanting the essay to just get to the point as quickly as possible. Like, I just want to know, what is this essay about? Having a fancy hook is just kind of distracting when you're trying to get to the topic and just find out the basic information as quickly as possible. So this really isn't the place where you want to, show your ability to, someday write the great American novel. Do that in your personal statement. That will be amazing in your personal statement. That will not make a good UC personal insight question. Similarly, no gimmicks. So like writing an extended metaphor comparing yourself to your figure skates. This could be a fabulous topic for a personal statement, but it is not a good way to answer a UC personal insight question. You want your essays to be direct. Make sure that the topic of your essay is clear from the start. You want to write in first person. This might seem pretty obvious because they are personal insight questions about you, but you want to do that right from the beginning. So no intros about how creativity has been part of the human experience since the dawn of time. No, just talk about yourself. You have free reign to be completely self-centered, and that is actually what a UC essay should do. It should talk about you. The style should be semi-formal. You aren't writing a comment on TikTok or sending a text message, but it also doesn't need to be as formal as an essay you might write for English class. And you want to have a positive tone. So no matter what the topic, you want to sound like you're optimistic and not like you're complaining. A couple other core principles for drafting. Number 1, don't worry about the word count. In general, I recommend drafting over word count rather than under because it tends to be easier to cut than to add. But either way, just don't focus on the numbers in the early stages of drafting. Number 2, don't self-censor. If you're not sure whether to say something or whether you're writing about it in the right way, don't worry about that right now. Just write it down. getting started on the introduction. The first paragraph should answer the question and establish the topic. Like any introduction, it should give the reader a clear idea of what the rest of your essay is going to be about, and it should also orient the topic in your life as a whole. You can use that first sentence from your outline to get started, and then you want to elaborate on that sentence enough to give your reader a little more understanding of the basics. So like who, what, when, where, why, stuff like that. So you might want to give some background, like how you came to be doing this activity, what inspired you to do it, how you got started, how long you've been doing it. And you want to make sure that you're covering key relevant facts, like the name of the organization you are participating in and the years in high school when you were doing it, so that the reader can orient this activity or whatever it is you're writing about in your life in high school as a whole. Paragraph number 2, and this might very well end up being more than one paragraph. This is basically the body of your essay, and it should focus on evidence. The most important thing about this section is be specific. I think a lot of my students struggle with kind of when and how to be specific. Like in a personal statement, there's a lot of emphasis on putting in all of these sort of vivid, interesting details to bring the essay to life. And you want the UC essays to be interesting, but still what is most important is that the specific details you have help the reader understand just exactly what it is you did, why you did it, why this is important for understanding who you were and what you did in high school. Make sure that you are explaining your activities and your life, so that someone who really just knows nothing about you could really quickly understand what it is you're writing about and why that's important. Keep in mind that the app readers only have so much information from your activity descriptions, and they're actually really hoping that you're going to elaborate on those activities in your essays. Okay, so let's get into some of the nitty-gritty of how you might expand on some of the examples you came up with during your brainstorming. Say that our Jedi apprentice wants to be able to expand on their phrase, "I was able to help new Jedi develop their skills." They've already come up with a couple examples of this, helping train young Jedi and supporting their peers. What they need to do is elaborate specifically on these things. Okay, so I'm really excited to share this with y'all, but I got permission from my Jedi apprentice student to read their body paragraph draft so you could all see how they expanded on this idea. From 9th to 11th grade, I led a group of 5 Padawans as they learned how to operate a lightsaber. Since this had the risk of being a very dangerous activity, I had to watch my students closely and work hard to maintain order so that no one was injured. I especially struggled with one student, Kai. After endlessly reprimanding her in the group, I finally took her aside to talk in private. In our discussion, I found out that she'd already learned a lot of what we were doing before she joined the camp, and that she was bored in the class. I took the initiative to get her moved to a more appropriate class for her level. In this paragraph, our apprentice Jedi has summarized the activity, but also given a specific example to give us a better idea of what their day-to-day experience was like in that activity. It also focuses on how the writer demonstrated leadership by taking the initiative to work with this student and to find a better class that was more appropriate for her skills. Then you can go on to explain 2 or 3 different examples in a similar way. Or maybe you have more that you want to cover and you're not able to go into that same amount of depth as in this example because you want to make sure the reader has an idea of all of the different things that you did with a certain activity. That's also fine. There's many ways to write the body paragraphs of these essays. How you approach your draft will also vary depending on the question that you're responding to. If you're talking about a challenge you faced, the body paragraphs might take more of a storytelling format as you narrate events that happened in your life. There's no single right way to write the UC essays, but there are some wrong ways, which I will get into in a minute. But first, paragraph 3, the conclusion. In this section, you want to reflect on what you've learned or how the experiences you discuss in the essay have shaped who you are today. Did they change your understanding of yourself or affect your goals? You especially want to make sure to link whatever activities you talk about from the past to the present. The UCs want to know who you are now and who you will be in the future, not just what happened to you in the past. Let's talk about some pitfalls you might run into, especially when responding to certain questions. So the creative side essay. Better essays will show that you took that creative activity to the next level. I've seen a lot of these essays that are like, I really like cooking, or I really like painting, and it's really fun and helps me relax. And I mean, on a personal level, like, I read that and I'm like, well, that's great. I am really happy for you that you have that activity. But from the perspective of an admissions reader, that doesn't really tell them a lot about like what you might contribute in college. So this will be a stronger answer if you can say like, I started a cooking blog, or I sell my art at craft fairs, because then the reader can really see that you've invested a lot of time and effort into this activity, and that you're ambitious, and that you're like, you know, hustling. And you know, even if you don't have something big like that, like maybe you've never sold your artwork or published it somewhere, if you can just show that you've like used that hobby positively in some way, like you've made gifts for friends, or maybe the process of doing that helped you go through a difficult time and you came out a stronger person, that can help you write a stronger answer as well. Honestly, it kind of frustrates me to give this advice because I personally don't feel like everyone should constantly feel like they have to hustle and be ambitious with everything that they do. Like, can we just let people enjoy things? But, you know, this is just advice in terms of writing an essay that will make a stronger essay. For essays number 4 and number 5, the educational opportunity, educational barrier, and the significant challenge essays, I have advice that is very similar for both of those. For both of these questions, an absolutely key word is overcome. It will not be a good essay if you end with the fact that you're still mired in the problem. So if you're writing an essay about how your greatest challenge was dealing with depression, and you say that you are still very depressed and that's just how you leave it, that's not going to make for a very good essay. But this shouldn't discourage you from responding to these questions, even if you're still dealing with the challenge. If you've overcome the challenge, the essay will be easier to write. However, notice the question doesn't just say overcome. It says steps you have taken to overcome this challenge. So if you can successfully show that you've taken steps in the past to improve this problem and continue to be on a path to overcoming it, this might actually make a really excellent essay. I would say that these can be tricky essays, but they also can be really important for helping the admissions reader understand the context of your life. So I would just say approach them carefully in how you write about these topics. Everyone's writing process is a little bit different, but I'm always going to come back to 2 main points. Answer the question and don't self-censor. This is what editing is for. You can always change the essay later. You can rewrite the whole thing. Until you have something written down, you won't know what you're working with. So get that essay out of your head and onto the page. Thank you so much for watching this video, and good luck with drafting. Make sure to comment with any questions and to subscribe to get my next video about editing and revising your personal insight questions.